The roles of the kings in Malaysia and the function of the Conference of Rulers. The background of Malay ruler.
The federal constitution was legislated with the setting up of conditions for the system to exist. One of the characteristics of the parliament democracy is the separation of powers into three parts, which are the legislative, the judiciary, and the executive. Malaysia is also a country that practices a system of democracy based on the federation system. In accordance to this, the states of Perlis, Kedah, Penang, Perak, Selangor, Negeri Sembilan, Malacca, Johor, Pahang, Terengganu, Kelantan, Sarawak, and Sabah have agreed to concept of forming Malaysia. Each state involved has surrendered part of its, such as financial defense, education, foreign affairs, and others. As stated in the Malaysia Constitution, which is administered by the central government, there are matters that are under the power of the state, and each state administers the power over those matters.
The roles and function of Malay rulers.
The 9 Malay rulers in Malaya face considerable challenges to their status and position at the end of the Second World War. The Malayan Union scheme introduced in 1946 by the Colonial Office deprived them of most of their powers. But after massive protest by the Malays, much of the powers of the rulers were restored. The framing of the Malayan Independence Constitution between 1956 and 1957 pitted the institution of monarchy against the forces of nationalism. The dominant Alliance Party and most of the other parties wanted the rulers to be constitutional monarchs with limited powers under the new constitution. Some scholars have suggested that this reflected the demise of the institution of monarchy against the forces of nationalism. This article shows through a close examination and analysis of the primary constitutional records that the rulers fought a pitched battle to safeguard their position and status from further erosion in the new constitution. The article argues that the rulers were not only able to prevent further erosion of their constitutional powers, but were in fact able to enhance their position considerably and give the Conference of Rulers a new lease of life in the 1957 Federal Constitution.
The roles and function of the Conference of Rulers.
The Conference of Rulers is not only supreme but also unique, as it is the only such institution in the world. After the country gained independence, the Conference of Rulers was established in accordance with Article 38 of the Federation Constitution. The function and duties of the Conference of Rulers are as provided in Federal Constitution are as follows: electing in accordance with the provisions of the third schedule the Yang di-Pertuan Agong and the Timbalan Yang di-Pertuan Agong, agreeing or disagreeing to the extension of any religious acts, observances, or ceremonies to the Federation as a whole, consenting or withholding consent to any law, and making or giving advice on any appointment which under this Constitution requires the consent of the conference or is to be made by or after consultation with the conference. Appointing members of the special court under clause 1 of article 182, granting pardons, reprieves and respites, or remitting, suspending or commuting sentences under clause 12 of article 42, and may deliberate on matters of national policy, for example changes in immigration policy, and any other matter that it deems fit.
The roles of Yang di Pertuan Agong Yidpa.
The Yang di Pertuan Agong's duties and roles cover the executive, legislative and judiciary, the three branches of the government which are stipulated in the federal constitution. In a write-up on the constitutional monarchy in the country, University Malaya Emeritus Professor of Law Dr. Shah Salim Faruqi said that as the formal head of the executive branch, the Yang di Pertuan Agong is also conferred with the vast array of powers in his office. By the country's constitution, the Yang di Pertuan Agong is also Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces. Being the country's supreme head, he is also tasked with appointing the Prime Minister, the Ministers and Deputy Minister, and the Attorney General. He also appoints the Chief Justice, Court of Appeal President, Chief Judge of Malaya, Chief Judge of Sabah and Sarawak Federal Court, Court of Appeal and High Court judges. He also commissions Malaysia ambassadors and High Commissioner for the duties abroad. His Majesty also has the power to grant pardons in respect of all offences which have been tried by court-martial and all offences in the federal territories of Kuala Lumpur and Labuan and Putrajaya. Besides being the Armed Forces Supreme Commander, the Yang di Pertuan Agong is also the head of Islamic affairs for his own state as well as states that do not have a ruler, namely Malacca, Penang, the federal territories, Sabah and Sarawak. Most of the Yang di Pertuan Agong powers are not discretionary.
Any relevant additional information?
The Yang di Pertuan Agong shall, before exercising his function, take and subscribe the oath of office. The oath of office must be signed before the conference of rulers with two rulers and witnesses and in the presence of Chief Justice of the Federal Court. In the event that Chief Justice of the Federal Court shall take his place, the oath of office must also be signed by the two rulers appointed for that purpose by the Conference of Rulers. The Timbalan Yang di Pertuan Agong shall, before exercising his function other than the function exercisable for the purpose of convening the Conference of Rulers, take the subscribe of the oath of office. The oath of office must be signed before the Conference of Rulers and in the presence of the Chief Justice of the Federal Court. In the event that the Chief Justice of the Federal Court is unable to attend, the next senior judge of the Federal Court shall take his place.
The conclusion. The king or a ruler is to be tried in court under Article 182. The conference has the authority to appoint 2 out of the 5 judges on the special court. If the king or a sultan or the consort of the king or a sultan is found guilty in a court, the conference has the power to grant a pardon, reprieve, respite, remission, suspension, or commutation of the sentence. List Yang di Pertuan Agong Malaysia. Agong Pertama. Agong Kedua Disalangar. Agong Ketiga di Perlis. Agong kempet didarenganu. Agong kalimadikata. Agong kenam dikalantan. Agong keta judipahan. Agong kalapandajar. Agong kasambalandi pura. Agong kese puladinagari sembilan. Agong kesabelasti zalangar. Agong kejuabelasti perlis. Agong ketiga belas didarenganu. Agong kiempat belas decada. Agong kelamabelas dikalantan. Agong kinam belas dipahan.